Today's episode is sponsored by Ellie, Ellii.
Ellie is one of the world's leading content libraries for English language teachers, with thousands of ready-made lessons and flashcards and hundreds of videos that you can use to complement your own curriculum or use as your main source of materials.
Ellie is run by a team of former English teachers, dedicated to creating content that engages your language learners.
If you're an independent teacher or paying for your materials out of pocket, we invite you to use our podcast's exclusive discount code Think-Aloud to save 15% off your first membership term. That's THINKALOUD.
And if you're an administrator looking to buy for your whole program, just reach out to the fine folks at Ellie to inquire about a 2-month free trial to test it out for your organization. And don't forget to mention who sent you, your friends at the Teacher Think-Aloud Podcast.
Head to ellie.com today. That's ELLII.com.
Hello, and welcome to the Teacher Think-Aloud Podcast, a podcast for reflective practice for teachers of English around the world. I'm your co-host, Shé.
And I'm Anna.
Today's episode is going to sound a little different from what you're used to, and that's because we recently teamed up with the amazing folks over at the DIESOL podcast, Ixchell, Reyes, and Brent Warner.
Right, the DIESOL podcast, or the Developing Innovation in English as a Second or Other Language podcast. We've been fans of DIESOL for several years, and it was about time we collaborated with them.
Sure was. Brent and Ixchell were particularly interested in chatting with us about our favorite topic, the foundation of our podcast, reflective practice. And there was so much to talk about that we decided to split it into 2 parts.
Today's episode will focus on the why and foundational concepts in reflective practice. In part 1, we're using DIESOL's podcast style, so you'll get a little less commentary from us and a little more conversation and banter across the 4 of us.
And in part 2, coming soon, we'll continue the conversation and dig deeper into practical applications for reflective practice. So be sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you're notified as soon as part 2 is available.
So, without further ado, we bring you the DIESOL podcast. Enjoy!
How do you bring reflection into your teaching practice? We're discussing it today with Anna and Shé from the Teacher Think-Aloud Podcast. Welcome to the DIESOL podcast, where we record and we focus on developing innovation as English as a second or other language. I cannot get words out of my mouth. My name is Brent Warner. I'm professor of ESL, and I'm, of course, here with Ixchell Reyes, award-winning educator in innovation, professional development, and all the other fun stuff we always kind of give you credit for. Ixchell, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm happy to be here.
Good. And we are also here today.
Drum roll.
Drum roll. We're here with Anna Chiriani Anna Chiriani Dean and Shé Reel. We talked about this earlier. We had a quick moment in where I'm like, I'm not going to pronounce either of your last names correctly. So I think I got it or close enough from the Teacher Think-Aloud podcast. How are you guys?
Great.
Wow,
so happy to be here.
This energy, Brent. Excellent.
I know, right? We got to step it up here.
My nerves are gone now.
Yeah. So, so this is a combo effort between the 2 of us. So this episode might be a little weird, and the next episode might be a little, well, not weird. I mean, what's the right word for it? Unique.
Different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different. Yeah. It's like, throwing whatever we have into the blender and seeing what comes out of it. We've all done that once or twice. But we're, so your show is a podcast for reflective practice for teachers of English around the world. And both of you are experienced educators and teacher trainers. We've been talking, actually, Anna, I think you reached out to me a year and a half ago or 2 years
Something like that. Yeah.
In a while. Yeah.
And you're like, hey, and I'm like, yeah, let's work together. And then it's like, time
Big
goes
lead up.
by, right? Yeah. So we're glad to have you guys here. We're doing kind of our show on this one and kind of your show on the next episode. Everybody
it's experimental.
Will have to listen to both to get the full picture of everything. But how are the 2 of you doing?
Great. Yeah. It's sunny here. It's, you know what? I can't complain. Last week I was on the East Coast. It was 90 and humid.
was
And here
awful.
it's like 73 and lovely, no humidity. So,
Today
you know.
was 111.
Oh.
My.
Amazing. for you
Wow.
guys.
Well, Anna, as soon as you left the East Coast, it cooled off a bit. It's just
No.
like in the 70s today. It's raining. It's really a beautiful day here.
Aw, I brought the heat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're so happy to be here with the two of you whom we haven't really, we saw you at TESOL 2025 and we were just, I mean, the energy there was just so exciting. And it's just really great to have this 1.5 to 2 year outcome.
Lots of anticipation. We're
The
ready for
quality of
this.
this product, 2 years in the making, has got to be absolutely top notch here.
Oh,
So,
yes.
Yes,
Best episode
yes.
you've ever heard. Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
We're
Yeah.
setting expectations really high here, guys.
Don't worry, we'll reflect on this later.
Yes.
Yes.
So speaking of which, we are talking about reflection because that's kind of like one of your big things that you guys are really focused on is the value of reflection. Ixchell talks about it quite a lot too, and I'm like, no, we're not going to podcast about that.
Aw.
We're
No, I'm just
making her
kidding.
wish come true.
No,
Yes. Ta-da!
so no, she talks about that a lot. I think you talk about it way more than I do in terms of, I mean, we bring it up regularly, but I don't think we've ever done an episode that's really focused on it. And so we're like, well, since we're working together, let's really bring that conversation together and kind of see what's going on. So, Ixchell, I'm going to hand the reins over to you and we're going to get into it.
All right. So, yes, I talk about reflection often. And this is something I do with my pre-service teachers. And I always tell them, what is a mirror? So, we're going to start with the image of a mirror. Think of a mirror. What do we use it for? We use it to check what's there. We notice what's in the right place and appreciate it. We notice the flaws. And then we sort of refine what we perceive as flaws. So, reflection works in exactly the same way. And we want to compare what we intended with what actually happened. And I think we've all had those mirror moments in our own practice. Maybe when we first started off as teachers, there were things that perhaps we would not do anymore, or we thought, what
Lots
the
of them.
heck? So they reveal something that maybe we wouldn't have noticed otherwise, right? So what have those moments looked like for you?
I mean, we're gonna get
It's a big
Let's
question.
get right into
It's
it.
a big question.
No avoiding this one.
Yeah, I mean, they take many different forms, right? Reflection isn't just one thing, right? It's not just putting the mirror up close to one little tiny aspect of your lesson. It's also looking at the mirror, right? The whole picture of what's around you and how it all fits together. So, I mean, I think every teacher's probably experienced this of kind of zooming in and zooming out on reflective practice, right? I don't know if I'm answering your question, but yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, well, I always think of back to when I started teaching. That's the first thing I think of what it looked like for me, and then that will bring on other things. But that's kind of my big question. And why is it important in your own experience as a teacher trainer, and learner, really?
Yeah. I mean, why? I don't know, Shé. I'm just going for it, Shé. So you let me know if you want to
Go
jump
for
in.
it.
But
I'll stop
okay.
you. I'll stop you if you say anything weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why is reflection important? This is kind of the whole foundation of our podcast. I mean, reflective practice is just the practice of reflecting, right? It's pretty self-explanatory, and reflecting on your actions and engaging in a process of continuous learning. And when we think of why it's important, we do all these things as educators to improve our practice, right? I mean, there's the number of years that we've been in the classroom. There are all of these workshops we go to, all these professional development opportunities and conferences, and then we get feedback, and we have all of this experience under our belt. But I think the most important puzzle piece there, I mean, we can experience all of these things, but if there's no reflection, it doesn't really take hold, maybe it does, but I think we really need to reflect within this broader scope of our experience, and the professional development that we undertake. We always kind of harp back to John Dewey, right? We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience. So that reflection point really, really is key. And you might not realize that you're doing it, and really taking ownership of that reflection, and being intentional about it, I think, is what can take us to the next level as teachers and as people.
Well, I kind of want to talk about that intentionality part, because
Mhm.
to me, it seems that there's a couple of different things that happen with reflection. One is I think a lot of people pay lip service to reflection, but don't actually end up making changes based on,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
theoretical, oh, I just thought about what I did after class and that's kind of the
Yeah.
end of it type of thing,
It's a
Mhm.
good starting point.
Sure, sure. And then there's the other side where it's like, oh, you're actually doing tons of reflection, but you're not really recognizing that this is the action you're doing. So when you're going to a conference and kind of saying, oh, I don't know if I would do that in my class. These are what my students are like, or, I like this idea, but I'm going to change it, right? Those are part of the
Mhm.
reflection process as well, when you recognize how it applies to your own setting, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess one of the things that I was thinking about with this, and whether now is the right time to ask it or not, you can say we'll talk about it later, but is the idea of like, how do we set about being intentional with our reflection and saying like, hey, I mean, there's many different ways, of course, as we mentioned, to possibly reflect, and we can talk about a few of those techniques themselves. But like the idea of like building it into your schedule or building it into your practice, I think kind of needs to be one of the first steps, where you're saying that, okay, hold on, class is over. I'm not going to run off to the supermarket, or I'm not going to, jump off and go have lunch with my friends. I'm going to give myself the 5 or 10 minutes to sit here and figure out what's going on, or whatever it is, like whatever setting. How do you, as practitioners, set yourselves up to make sure that reflection is not just a byproduct of the work that you're doing, but it's an intentional part of your regular routine?
Yeah, well, I think that I could say here, Brent, we'll talk about that later. There's a lot to consider, and I think the idea in I think maybe this first part of the conversation is to talk to maybe the non-believers that are out there, because really at conferences, when people ask, hey, what are you doing, what are you presenting on, and Anna and I say like, oh, we're talking about reflective pedagogy. First people will say like, okay, well, what is there to talk about? Like, you just do it. And it's like,
Mhm.
whoa, but that doesn't happen. That doesn't actually happen. The concept of being a reflective practitioner is not something that's new. I mean, John Dewey, the father of experiential learning, back in 1930 said this quote: we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. Fine. But then from there, people started to really think through, what does it mean to be reflective? What are, the characteristics that a teacher needs to have? What are the theories or the underpinnings that can support them in really building out that reflective practice? So, to the people who say, well, reflection just happens. Well, it does happen, but I think it goes back to your point, Brent, like, what do you actually do with it, right? And are you creating I guess, a context for yourself where you can reflect in a meaningful way? And so that's what we hope to do, is to convince people that there is value, that this is not, no, it's not a new concept, but maybe your way of framing it and bringing it into your practice on a regular basis, there are some new ideas sort of in that area.
Well, and the key word there, I'm going to just kind of preview what we're going to talk about later, but I would say you repeated that word practice, Shé, and it is reflective practice.
Mm-hmm.
So just like any kind of practice in our lives, like I think just my mind goes to yoga practice, because that's what Shé was doing earlier in the day, I assume. But
you got that right.
It's a practice, right? So a practice doesn't just happen. It takes habit building. It takes really integrating that into a routine. And so, yes, we'll talk about tools for doing that later on. But I think that's really what differentiates it from that kind of one-off reflection that happens without us knowing about it.
I really like that you're both emphasizing that intention. Going back to the mirror analogy, the reason why I bring that up to with my pre-service teachers is because oftentimes, of course, they're international students and or international educators, and they may perceive when we talk about reflecting, they may think of a summary of what you did, and reflecting is actually a deep thinking that becomes that experience, right? In itself. So not to get so meta here, but when we are so used to a routine, we get stuck not taking risks, right? And that's one of the ways to innovate, is to be able to take a risk. And so for me, breaking the cycle of, well, I've done it this way and it works, is important, right? And so we don't want to get stuck. We don't want to stop questioning what we're doing and why we're doing it, because that also can happen over time. Someone mentioned, was it the dilemma of the person who becomes like a master at something? I forgot what the actual, where you're so good at what you do that you don't really.
The curse of knowledge.
The curse of knowledge, right? So it's in the same way, right? And so reflection can pull us out of that autopilot setting.
Yeah.
So another question, how can we stay open and curious and flexible? Because at first we're inexperienced, and then we get comfortable, and then we just do the same thing again and again.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is really, again, back to, I feel like I say, it's about how you frame it. Anna and I, when we did a blooper reel, our very first blooper reel, it was like, the framing is key. The framing is key. But it's true. So like, I think the first part, Ixchell, is to think about how reflection really is this. It's an opportunity for you to get to know yourself, primarily your teacher self, but I would also argue your larger self, your more holistic self, on a deeper level, right? By starting to ask, what are the values that we're demonstrating in our teaching practice? What are we telling our students? What are we telling the world that it is that we care about? What values are we pushing? And does the action that we're taking in our classes actually align with the values that we hope to push, to put out into the world? Do they align with our teaching philosophy? So I think, how can teachers stay open, curious, and flexible? I think that's a practice, pushing yourself to lead with curiosity rather than lead from a place of judgment, which I think is, to go back to the mirror analogy, which is a great one, I think we tend to look in the mirror and right away pick out the flaws, pick out the things that we'd like to change about ourselves. And I think when it comes to, examining your teaching in this way, you really kind of want to start from an asset-based mindset. You want to start with, what am I doing well? Instead of focusing in on, those perceived flaws, because then you're really just, you're ending the process for yourself before it can get juicy, before it can get good.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just so important to honor the good, because we do so much, and sometimes we don't see it because we're so focused on what we perceive as flaws, right? And that may not always be the experience your students or others get from your teaching. And so I love that line, lead with curiosity rather than judgment.
Yeah. And they're probably not seeing the things that you're imagining that they're seeing, right? They're probably not seeing that as flaws. Like, that's your anal teacher brain, picking those things apart. Go ahead, Brent. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just thinking about that too, is like, as I've gotten older and more experienced as a teacher, it's easier for me anyways to say, oh, okay, I did that part well, right? Like I tend to be a little bit more kind to myself, or a little bit more like recognizing, and especially, as I've seen other teachers teach, or, whatever else it is, I'm like, oh, okay, like, hey, I'm not as bad as I thought I was. And that's not to say like someone else was bad. It's just like, oh, okay, like these are pro teachers, and I'm watching like excellent teachers teach, and I'm like, I kind of do some of the, like a lot of the same things. And so, even just being able to reinforce to yourself that like, hey, you know what you're doing, and like what you're, the way that you do it makes a difference. Leaning in, if you are a beginning teacher and you find yourself always criticizing yourself, I guess I would encourage that, like, over time that starts to shift. And then I think that part of what we're talking about is that with the reflective practices, you can accelerate that. So you don't have to wait 10 years or 20 years before you feel like you're a good or okay teacher, whatever it is. And so it's worth kind of spending a little bit of time in order to kind of bring your negative self-talk down and bring your positive self-talk up.
I love that idea of reflective practice as an accelerant almost. I mean, we have to take our time in it also, right? As all things, but I really do think that's true. Yeah.
Well, and I think that that idea of, it being this sort of ongoing, continuous cycle, I think that brings a bit of relief to teachers, especially newer teachers who are like, I just started, I worry about everything. Like, how can I possibly choose one thing to focus on? And I just want to offer, something that Anna and I like to share a lot when we're talking with new teachers and trying to get them to become more reflective is, going back again, because reflective pedagogy is not anything new, but going back to David Kolb and his 1984 experiential learning cycle, and, happy to share that in the show notes, but it really is this idea that reflection should be and is cyclical in nature. And so, it's easy to get overwhelmed and to think like, oh, how can I, look at this 45-minute session that I did and reflect on that whole thing? Well, don't do that, because you're already setting yourself up for failure. Like, choose one concrete experience, one thing that happened in that class that you want to examine. And then you move on to sort of reviewing and reflecting on that one specific thing. That's called the reflective observation piece. And then you move into, okay, what conclusions can I draw from that experience? What am I learning from that experience? Just that tidbit that you're reflecting on. And then you're moving into this sort of active experimentation area where you've gone in, you've essentially done the work, right? You've picked apart a little bit of your lesson, you've chosen one thing to focus on. Maybe you've read some articles or you've talked with a partner, an accountability partner. Such a teacher, right? I'm like, but the idea is that you go back in then and you try it out, right? Like, the beauty, I think, of teaching is that, like, every day is different, and that can be scary, but I think it's also this opportunity. You get to try again. If it didn't work right yesterday, it can work right tomorrow, right? Like, chill out a little bit. It's not that serious, right?
I love that.
There's that yoga, right? Like, just chill out, guys.
Oh, and this is really hard. I mean, for Shé and myself, I know we're both perfectionists. That's a hard thing to say, but I think reflection has gotten us there, kind of, still working. Yeah.
We're recovering perfectionists, I think, because of our relationship with reflection. Right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ixchell.
We're not used to having so many voices.
I know.
In.
No, please jump in.
Okay. So I wanted to ask maybe about times when that reflection piece, because you said you're a recovering perfectionist. Me too. Sometimes that reflection goes beyond that. How did it go? And it's pushed or nudged you to transform something that you've been doing for years. Has there been something that you want to share?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you use the word transform, and I think that I think the point of reflection really is transformation, right? Because it really isn't just that the micro changes. I mean, those are definitely important in improving our practice, right? But transformation is really the point. And because of that, I think it's hard for me to really put my finger on just one specific thing that changed, because I think my entire practice has changed as a result of this continuous reflection, right? It's a gradual shift. It's ongoing. I'm still transforming in my personal and professional life.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, I mean, I hope so.
You're a cheerleader.
Yeah. But I think maybe one example is just more broadly tying my values. I think, Shé, you were talking a lot about tying your teaching to your values and your belief system. And I think that reflection has really gotten me there. So for example, I've had a lot of, over the years, Indigenous students in my class, students from different kinds of marginalized communities in different contexts. And I think when I first started as a teacher, I had all these great intentions, but I did make some assumptions going into my teaching practice, about, their first language and what their culture was, what they share with others in class, what the overlaps are between this student and that student. And actually, no, they're actually not the same at all, even though they're from the same country or speak the same language. So I think that a lot of, this is just an example, but reflecting about that cross-cultural element and some of the conversations I've had, and really sitting down and evaluating how I am approaching these people as people has led me to a more understanding approach to how, for example, I set up deadlines, how I talk about home languages in the classroom, the kind of humility that I try to hold on to in the face of the unknown, how to step in if there's conflict between two students. It's really systemic, so it's not just one thing, but that's just one example of just a broader way of figuring out how to tie my concrete practice to my value system.
Right. It's like this evolution, right? And it continues because the reality is your students are constantly changing, right? You're getting a new group every time, like you said, maybe from the same country, but absolutely from different family values, different neighborhoods, different social groups, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, I mean, it takes a lot of time, I think, to fully see that all of the differences and similarities and beautiful, unique aspects of all of our students, and to understand how to integrate that into our practice, I think took a lot of reflection for me. And I think just, more broadly, transformation is the point, and it's all about really that continuous growth as a professional. Being a reflective educator is really a commitment to a growth mindset and to this idea of continual growth and transformation, to use your word,
So I'm going to go slightly off topic and then come right back on topic, which is a couple of nights ago, I watched an episode of hopefully one of all of our favorite TV shows, Abbott Elementary.
Yes.
And one of this episode was I just quickly looked it up. It was season 4, episode 10. It was testing, and so in the episode, the premise was Janine was running some pre-tests with her class, and her class suddenly did not do well on the test, right? And she was like so upset about it because they'd always done well, and then Barbara's point was essentially it kind of came out. It's like, yeah, you can't just always teach the same way, right? Like even if it worked in the past, even if whatever was going on, the reality of teaching is things that worked well for one group might not work well for the next group. And so like you might have had 3 or 4 good years, and then then now you have to change everything up, right? And so from the Janine perfectionist character, right, going on in there, she's like sitting there going, well, what were all these tiny little things that made the difference, right? Is like, what time did you do your test at? What what's going on? What are the this thing? And it's like, no, hold on a second. Like the one thing that was the constant change problem is you, right? And so so anyways, that kind of made me think about this idea of like, okay, are we looking basically, or are we looking deep? And there's some of this research out there that talks about this idea of critical reflection, right? So going deeper, not just having this like hey, this is what I'm doing, and then since it's working, it's fine. You also have to reflect on things of saying, well, since it's working, what do I have to pay attention to that could work better, right? And so there's different levels of this conversation. And so just kind of this is, I think, for our episode here, this is probably our last kind of big question, which is how do we move beyond that surface level reflection, right? How do we start to do these things, like recognizing what our own biases are, what the power dynamics in the class are, what types of systematic issues are happening inside of the classroom, etc., right? Like this part is going to be key to being effective, in my thinking, on the way of, making actual meaningful change in your teaching practices that are benefit to your students today, not your students 2 years ago or 3 years ago, right? And so I just want to kind of grab your thoughts on making that shift to deeper reflection.
Yeah. Well, so that's a really, I think, important question, and to try to make it as simple as possible, I think like we can think of it as there are three levels to reflection. We have descriptive, which is sort of your superficial, what is happening in the class. Then you have conceptual, which is why is it happening? Right? Trying to understand the root. And then the critical reflection is really like sort of that larger, as Anna mentioned earlier, the systemic questions like how is power framing or distorting, educational processes or interactions, or, what we're doing and how it's going to play out in the long run. So I think the first way that we step away from that superficial reflection, and that's, I don't want to say superficial, it has a negative connotation,
Right,
but like
right.
it is, surface level, let's say, descriptive reflection. First asking yourself, like, well, does it work in alignment with our students' best interests, right, in the long term? So I think you can sort of train your brain to say, like, okay, what's happened and why, and immediately try to make that jump to, is this a good thing overall, right? I think when we're thinking about setting ourselves up for success as reflective teachers, we can start with something simple like, I'm going to give you an example of, you start by examining, your student talk time versus teacher talk time, right? Looking at sort of the proportions. That's a good starting place. What happened, right? Descriptive reflection. But then maybe to go a little bit deeper, you start to think like, what are the SEL or the social emotional learning implications of giving students the floor, right? Why is it important that we have more student talk time than teacher talk time? And then beyond that, how are we ensuring that all students get the floor, that they're sharing the floor, that there's equity in responses in the classroom? So like that's sort of the critical reflection. Those are the examples or angles that you could really get deeper and explore deeper. So I think it's a matter, I don't know if I've answered your question at all. I think I've made it a little bit more, I've made it more complicated in saying that like everything that you try to observe from your teaching has multiple layers. You just have to know how to ask the right questions.
Yeah, well, I think I would, when I'm thinking about that, it's like I'm in a place where I can do this, but I can say, hey, I don't have to do all of that thing, all of those things all at once, right? And I think the thing for a lot of people is like, oh, it feels so overwhelming to do all those steps or whatever else it is. But if we just say, well, let's just look at one, let's only focus on that one. And you mentioned this before too. It's like we don't have to do all the things. We have to kind of build our skills on one at a time. And then as we settle into it, then we can pick up more and continue improving that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think this the former idea, sort of looking at student talk time versus teacher talk time. I think that's like a great inroad for new reflective teachers. But I also want to encourage teachers to think about sort of reflection in a larger context. Like reflection isn't limited to the classroom, but we also want to think about, the learning environment on a larger scale. So what's happening, in the school, how is what's happening in the community or in greater society impacting what's happening in the classroom. So like it's all interconnected. And so I think, yes, it can be really complicated if you allow yourself to go there, but I think you're right, Brent. Like start with one small thing and then you can add layers from there as you become more comfortable.
Awesome.
Yeah.
With that, I think unfortunately we've got more to talk about, but we're gonna pause it out here, and I think we're going to wrap up this episode because I think we could just keep on going, but we're gonna wrap up here and we're gonna jump over and out.
It is time for our fun finds. And this time I actually have a YouTube channel shared by a student. This is kind of like, it's weird for me, but it was really interesting. It's M13 Fights, which is a bare knuckle military league for veterans. combat vets who've lost limbs. And so it helps them to rehab and actually get a lot of that trauma out and get their self-esteem and a lot of the trauma out. So if you are into that or not and you want to check it out, it's at M13 Fights. But actually, I thought, again, talking about what that practice is reflecting and what we want our students, obviously these guys are showing new recruits what can happen and also showing that they can overcome. So
I love that.
Interesting.
Brent, what do you got?
So last week I went and saw Alabama Shakes at the Hollywood Bowl, and it was awesome. Just what a show. What a true honor and pleasure to be able to see them play live at the Hollywood Bowl. I've been telling everybody that show was so fascinating because it was a band that deserved that venue and a venue that deserved that band, and it was so powerful. And when Brittany Howard came out, I mean, just crushing it. If you haven't listened to Alabama Shakes, the unique sound, really interesting, powerful, and then she is just a step above, just a total. She's a lifelong treasure of music. So anyways, Alabama Shakes at the Hollywood Bowl. Obviously I can't put everybody at the Hollywood Bowl, but go check out the Alabama Shakes if you see them coming through your town, because
I don't know who that is.
Reunited.
So I'm gonna go listen again.
Yeah.
I don't know either.
Me too. I'm taking that tip.
Alabama Shakes?
No.
Oh You'll know when you listen to their famous song, "It's Move On."
See, again, this is why I like the fun finds, because
Oh my god, yeah, unbelievable. So they had broken up for a number of years, and they kind of came back together on a reunion. And if you know, you know. That's what I'll go with. And if you don't know, now you know. So
now you know.
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
Anna, what do you got?
Well, in this current moment, I spent a lot of time trying to disassociate and scrolling through Instagram reels, which is very bad for me, but it is a way to, I guess, disengage my mind. But I recently found this whole series of videos called "Is That a Dog?" And I'm pretty sure it's an animal shelter somewhere that has a fantastic marketing team, because they go through, they just basically, it starts with, "Is that a dog?" And then they go through a bunch of different dogs that are at this shelter. And this guy narrates the whole thing. And he goes, "That's a dog. And that's a dog. And that's a Will Ferrell. And that's it is hilarious. It makes me laugh so much. Then that's really what I need these days.
Yeah, I need that.
Yeah. So if I
I'll
find
check
it,
out mine.
if I can
Check out
figure out how to find it, because it just comes up on my algorithm, but it's fantastic. And
We'll link it in the show notes. So
We'll find it.
yeah, and I wanted to tie in because I was racking my brains for something that isn't child related, because I have a 1-year-old, but this is triggering a child related thing, so I'm going to tell you anyway. It's that my 1-year-old, if you were to ask him, "Is that a dog?" he would go, "Bow bow." Because we speak Italian and Hindi at home. Those are our home languages, and bow bow is the equivalent of woof woof in both languages. So I'm very proud of that.
Oh,
Yes.
Amazing.
Very nice.
Yes. Okay, I'll pass the baton.
Oh man, I didn't write anything on our notes here, but I'm gonna share a not so new find, but I guess it doesn't have to be new,
It doesn't
right?
have to be
fun.
new.
This is fun.
Okay, well, our listeners can't see, but I am holding up a turquoise water bottle with Highland coos on it, Highland cows in American English. And I picked this water bottle up at the Edinburgh airport as I was leaving after the IATEFL conference in Edinburgh this year. And I'm sharing it as a fun find because I am here's my reflection kicking in, but I have ADHD. And that means that a lot of the time I forget to do things that are important for normal everyday functioning, like drinking water. So using a new receptacle for drinking water is really helpful to help me remember to drink water. So I realized that about myself. I know you guys said it doesn't have to relate back to teaching, but I'm cheating. It does. It's after a lot of reflection, I've learned that that's something that is challenging for me, and I found something that works. So until I lose this bottle, this is like what's getting me through the day. And then after that, there will be some other random bottle.
And can you repeat the Scottish pronunciation of that animal, please?
Well, I don't know if it's a good pronunciation. Someone's gonna call me out, but it's just Highland coos. Coos instead of cows. I
love it.
I think
you gotta do it you gotta go full for it, right? You're like,
oh no,
Highland coos.
Highland coos.
It's the Highland coos.
Yes.
I get myself in trouble all the time for just experimenting with accents. So I was playing it safe there, but
No. I'm
gonna get hate mail now.
All the Scottish people listening, please send messages to Shé specifically, even if you didn't like my pronunciation. He wants to know about it.
Yes.
So, all right.
Please.
Yes.
All right. So we are going to wrap things up for this part, and thank you guys so much. So this is our little experiment on bringing us together. We'll have a part 2, and we'll be kind of handing the ball over to you guys for running that. But that'll be in a couple weeks, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Yes. See you later.
Bye.
Well, that was fun.
Sure was. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, seriously, go back, check out the DIESOL podcast. That's DIESOL. You won't be disappointed.
Thanks so much for listening to this special episode of the DIESOL podcast and the Teacher Think-Aloud podcast. Make sure to subscribe and come back for part 2. Happy teaching
and happy reflecting.